So today we're going to be talking about how you can support your neurodivergent child and break down some of those barriers to employment. But before we start today, I just wanted to ask the participants if they've got an idea in their mind of what it is they want to get out of today. And they can pop that in the chat now if they want to Jodie, and we'll pick that up shortly. So what is it you'd like to get out of this session at the end? How would you like to feel? And we'll pick it up at the end and see if we've been able to answer some of those questions. And if not, we can pick it up in the question and answers section. So while you're doing that, I will introduce myself. My name's Janine Drew, and I've been working in the special needs sector with Witherslack Group for over 9 years now. But I'd say more importantly than that, I am the mum of a neurodivergent teenager. So obviously today I will be kind of sharing my sort of advice and support as a professional, but also as a mum of an autistic daughter. So hopefully there's a lot of common ground there that we can share going forward. So yeah, Jodie, have we had anyone typing into the chat about what they'd like to get out of today's session?
Hello, we've had understanding opportunities for my child and how employers can accommodate my autistic child.
Okay. Okay, well, we'll pick those up at the end. Hopefully we can have a bit of a discussion as we go through. Okay, so we'll make a start then. I'm going to share with you a quote, which is an oldie but a goodie. It's one of my favourites, in fact. So, choose a job you love and you'll never have to work a day in your life. Isn't that fantastic? I absolutely love this quote. And not only do I say this when I'm speaking to young people in our schools, I use this with my own children because it's just so true, isn't it? You know, I know we all need to work because we have bills to pay, but if you can choose a job that you love, that you're happy doing, the days go quicker, you don't get that Sunday night feeling, you know, of the dread that the weekend is over and you're back in work the next day. If you can find a job that you love and then you get paid at the end of the week or at the end of the month, I just don't think it gets much better than that. So I really do share this quote a lot, and I have shared it before. And as I say, I do it with my own children because I think it's really important to get young people, to get our children, especially young people with special educational needs, to get them thinking about what it is that they would like to do when they're older and doing something that they are going to be happy doing, and they're bound to stick at it a lot longer. So, you know, we all get 24 hours in a day. We sleep 8 and we work 8. And if you think about how long we spend with our work colleagues compared to how long we spend every day with our family members, it's a lot more, isn't it? So, you know, it's really important to be happy in your job. So I try to kind of sort of encourage that all the time. And I know that today's session is about breaking down barriers into employment. So parents might be thinking, oh yes, I need to be thinking about that, you know, when they get to about 14 or 15 or 16, when they're ready to transition out of school. For me, the younger they are, the younger your children are, when you can start talking about things, you can actually help them from primary age. So don't think that you're starting anything too early, because you're not. You know, it will all be beneficial. So it's really important that we talk to our children from a very young age, if we can, in terms of preparing them for when they get older. So I think that there's an obvious milestone throughout a young person's school journey that most parents kind of, the switch is flicked and we start thinking about preparing for adulthood. And that's usually around year 9. So if your child has an EHCP, it's a legal requirement from year 9 to incorporate discussions around transitioning into adulthood. Okay, so even if you're not thinking of it as a parent, the school that, you know, has the responsibility for the EHCP and the local authority, they will be thinking about it. But I think we as parents, we do think about it at that stage, quite simply because year 9 We're looking at options. We're thinking about GCSEs for the following year. So that is the point that a lot of the discussions take place around, okay, well, what subjects do you want to do? What do you like? What are the subjects that you like? Because a bit like what we're saying with the quote in terms of finding a job you love, pick the subjects that you love, because you will enjoy it more. You're more likely to learn, you're more likely to succeed and get better grades at those subjects. So I think that is an obvious point throughout a young person's school journey, where we as parents do start to think about what is the future going to look like, what is it that you'd like to do, whether that's following an academic pathway for your child. They may go on to college, university, and if they don't want to do that, do they want to follow something that's more around employment? So they might want to go into an apprenticeship. But whatever it is that they want to go into, we as parents will be kind of looking then at what subjects they're gonna take. Now, I always say to my children that obviously education is important. I want you to do your best, okay? Try your hardest and do your best. That's all you can do. And I think most parents are the same. It's not the end of the world if you don't get the GCSE results that you want, because there are different pathways that you can follow, okay? However, despite me saying that, even to my daughter, who's just started a year 10, so started her GCSE course now, I always say, no one is going to ask you to resit your art. No one's going to ask you to resit PE. No one's going to ask you to resit history. But what people will want are grades, the adequate grades for maths and English. So if nothing else, try your hardest in all these subjects, but if nothing else, your maths and English, try your very hardest if you can to try and get these. I know you can resit, but it's helpful if you can get it done. I always talk about short-term pain for long-term gain. Try your very best, because once you've got those qualifications, it's like a key that you can put on your key ring. You'll have them for life. No one's going to take them off you. And then that key, which is your maths and English, are going to open different doors and different opportunities for you. Okay, so we've done the GCSEs. We may have gone on to further education. We might have even gone on to university. So you've got all the qualifications. Should be easy now to get a job, shouldn't it? Sadly not. It's a really competitive world out there, as we all know. And one of the things that a lot of employers are looking for now are soft skills. So hard skills are typically described as those that are taught through formal education or a planned training program or on-the-job training. It's the skills that you need to actually physically and practically do that job. But soft skills, as many of us know, are often referred to as transferable skills or people skills. And a lot of employers nowadays are looking at soft skills in young people. So I wanted to take some time today to have a little look at the soft skills that your child might need to develop, might need a little bit of practicing with, that are going to sort of get them to where they need to be in terms of breaking down some of those barriers to employment. So soft skills are used in all aspects of our life as well. It's not just for employment, and it's your ability to work well with others. Now, I know this can be really difficult for some of our neurodiverse young people. If you have an autism diagnosis and you have difficulties with communication and interaction, then, this is going to be a tricky area. But what we'll do is we'll have a look at a few of the ones that are coming out as the sort of top 10, and we'll see if we can have a little look at some practical tips to sort of work our way around them. Okay, so employability skills. When I was sort of preparing for the presentation, I was looking at lots of different websites to see, how many sort of soft skills there are that employers look for. And there was around about 30 that came out as being the top skills that you would need to do any job, really. But we're going to just look at about the top 10 that kept popping up continuously. So first one, I say good communication skills. Like I said, this could be really tricky for your young person if they do have difficulties around communication and interaction. And I know we've kind of touched on communication skills in some of the earlier presentations. And the first presentation indeed was quite a good one. There was a good tip there that I'm going to take away about the goblin.tools technology that can be used. So what do we mean by communication skills? There are written skills, we can have verbal skills, non-verbal. Tracy touched on quite a few in her previous presentation, but there are things that are out there that can help you or help your child kind of break down those barriers. So in terms of written skills, your young person might have dyslexia. A lot of use of artificial intelligence is coming to the fore now, and people are getting a little bit used to it. AI is going to be featuring in all our lives very soon, despite people's concerns around it, and it can be used for force of good. So I think Chat GPT, if you've ever heard of that, or Copilot from Microsoft, which a lot of people will have as part of their laptop packages and on their mobile phones, and they can go online to have a little look at these. And you can, if you are putting together a CV, for example, or you're putting together some text and you know that your written skills are not great, you can put it into these sort of software packages, and they will write it for you. So it's really good to have a little look at those and practice on those to get the written text that you want. In terms of communicating verbally, again, this can be very difficult. My daughter is similar to Tracy's daughter, and she has what used to be called selective mutism. It's now referred to as situational mutism. So she's very articulate when she's at home with me, but if you put her into a situation where she's unfamiliar with the environment or the people that are there, then she really does struggle to kind of make her voice heard. So it's really good to practice with your child, and maybe getting them to go into the shop to ask for something, and it might be that, they can ask for something or they can pay for something, and they can kind of, even if it's difficult for them to maybe use eye contact at that stage, just practice going into that shop and asking for a certain item or certain items on a list, or asking for a direction, or asking where the toilets are. And it is about getting them out of their comfort zone, and I know that's really tricky, but the more you practice, then the better you get at it. And I think maybe doing sort of baby steps, really, you don't necessarily have to go in all guns blazing, like you need to make eye contact, you need to be loud in your voice, and make yourself heard, you need to be doing all of those things, please and thank yous, and checking change, and asking how, asking how their day's been or how the weather is. We don't have to go all out like that. It can just be sort of practicing those verbal communication skills. Role play is also a really good one, which I know has been touched on today, and you can do that in the comfort of your own home. And again, depending on the age of your child, you'd make it age appropriate. So if it was a very young child, then you could do it with toys, which is one of the things that was spoken about earlier. So just practicing those types of communication. And non-verbal, as I say, these things can be really tricky. They don't always come naturally to our young people, but if we practice them, we can get better at them. And we should encourage that with our children. So the second one on the list is resilience. Now, this is a cracking one, because we talk about this a lot in our schools, and at home as well. I talk about being resilient, being able to bounce back when things don't go to plan. Don't give up on things easily. So just kind of having that bit more of a tougher exterior, if you can. Water off a duck's back. That's a phrase that's often used, which again, I do understand that if you have a child that is quite literal in their understanding of language, then we might want to avoid sayings like water off a duck's back. But I think one thing that is really important in terms of building resilience is, from a young age, explaining to our young people and telling them, that our children, that life doesn't always go to plan. That's the one thing that you can guarantee in life. Things will go wrong. pathways we will have to change. I quite often describe it as a car journey. You're here now, you know where you need to get to, and you know how you're going to get there and how long it's going to take. And this is very similar to life in general, but sometimes you'll hit a roadblock or a barrier or a diversion, and you have to take a different route. And that's how I've explained it from at quite a young age to my children, is that actually when you're faced with that, you just need to work out, okay, which pathway am I going to take now? Because I can't get there the way that I planned. And that is life. That is kind of sums up life in general. It's a bumpy road, and it's a very windy road. So we need to be letting our young people know that that's what it's all about. When it comes to work days, throwing a sick day because it got a little bit difficult, that's not what employers want. They want you to kind of stick with it, come back in, ask questions, be resilient. And I think we as parents can start that process by encouraging our children to have good attendance at school. I know it's a completely different subject matter for young people that do have difficulty accessing school because of anxiety and school-based emotional avoidance, and I know that that's a different thing. But it's getting to know your young person, because I think sometimes it's really tricky, isn't it, as a parent? When you're pregnant and you have children, and you grow in your family, no one gives you a handbook to say, there you go, you've now become a mum or a dad. There's the handbook on how to bring up children, okay? But actually, when that happens, you've got a support network around you. So you can ask your sister, you can ask your friends, your mum, your dad, you can ask the people around you. When you have a child that has a special educational needs, it becomes a little bit more difficult, because you can't always necessarily go to your sister or go to your friends, because although they've got children, they haven't got children with SEN. So that can be really tricky. But it really is sometimes, just going back to what I was saying about getting your young person into school, if there are difficulties around that, sometimes it really is trying to work out, are they really struggling getting into school at the moment? Is it around their anxiety? Or are they just being a typical teenager, and maybe they've got maths and double science after lunch today, so it's not the best day to go in, so the tummy hurts, and it is tricky. There's no hard and fast rule with that one, but it is trying to identify whether, the difficulties are around their special educational needs, or whether it's just them being a typical teenager and chancing their luck. But yeah, it's really important. Instill that in them when they're at school, that it's important to be going in every day. You've got a bit of a sniffle, it doesn't really matter. You'll be fine. In you go. And that will carry through with them into adulthood. So they will then become that employee that, doesn't stay off at the drop of a hat, doesn't stay off because they've got a sniffle. The great thing about resilience is that you can develop your resilience muscle. So this is good to hear. So it really is about completing challenges that are going to take you out of your comfort zone. And that's the bit that our young people might not like to do. And I say our young people, us as adults, we don't always like coming out of the comfort zone. But sometimes it's just about finding what is tricky for you as a young person. Is it reading in class? Because if it is reading out loud in class, then maybe you should try to read out in class, just trying to find those things that are difficult and then trying to do them. And also recognizing that if you fail at it, it's not the end of the world. It can be massive to our young people, but it's about recognizing that it's not the end of the world. So, you might have heard the saying that the comfort zone is a beautiful place, but nothing ever grows there. Yeah. Okay. So that's a good one to think about for resilience. The third one then is a good work ethic. Now, we've touched on this earlier with the resilience, about having someone who is, prepared to get up, get in on time. It's not always about what it's about what you do. So if you're that person that's punctual, you attend work, you attend with enthusiasm, you're eager to learn, you're passionate about what you're doing. You don't have to have all the answers, but you just have to have some ability to be able to ask questions if you're unsure. just to get you along the way, and it will be recognised. It will be recognised by employers, and you'll be able to, you know, as a young person, if you can show initiative, then it goes a long way. So good work ethic and motivation is a good one to have, a good soft skill. Positive mental attitude and motivation. Okay, so positive mental attitude, having a can-do attitude. You know, are you the sort of person that is glass half empty or glass half full? You know, it's really tricky, this one, because especially for some of our young people that do have some social, emotional and mental health difficulties, that they might find it really tricky to put themselves in a good frame of mind. You know, some people just seem to be more naturally more happy than others, and you know, for some it is tricky to kind of get there. And I think it's worth saying that for even the most positive people that you know in your life, they won't be like that every day. You know, they don't bounce out of bed every morning with a spring in their step. You know, I myself have had to, some days when I'm driving into work where I'm just feeling a little bit under par, and you have to give yourself that self-talk. You know, yeah, come on, it's going to be a good day. You've got something to look forward to later when you get home or whatever it is. And you just have to give yourself a bit of a pep talk. Now, it comes easier for some than it does with others. And I think certainly, as I say, for some of our young people that have got some emotional and mental health difficulties, it can be really tricky. So it's always good to kind of, when you're in a bit more of a positive mind frame, is to kind of write down a little list of the things that make you feel a little bit better. And that could be anything from listening to your favorite music, going for a walk, going to the gym or getting some exercise, watching a favorite film, you know, or TV program, getting a bit of downtime, and just kind of maybe thinking about what have you got to look forward to at the weekend, or what have you got to look forward to this evening or tomorrow night. And just kind of, when you need it, then you can kind of draw on those strategies to kind of help you, put you in a bit more of a positive mood. Okay, so the next one is growth mindset. So for those that are not aware of it, having a growth mindset is the belief that your capabilities can improve over time with practice, yeah, and with learning. Okay, so it's about kind of saying, I can't do that now, but that's not to say that I can't do it in the future. And again, this can be really tricky for our young people with SEND, you know, but it is about kind of sort of from a very young age, sort of, you know, developing their brain and developing their train of thought so that it's more about, I can't do it yet, okay? I can't do it yet, but if I do X, Y, Z, I will be able to do it in a month's time or a year's time or in the future, okay? You know, it's just about having, again, it kind of leads on from the last one, it's just about having that kind of positive attitude. And I think what is really useful for situations like this is to remind your child of all the achievements that they've made over the years, whether that has been tying their shoelaces, so things that they may have thought at one point, I'm never going to be able to do this, you know, riding a bike, learning to play a musical instrument, whatever it is appropriate for your child's ability and their age, and using those examples of saying, well, you never thought you would be able to do X, Y, Z, but you look at you can now because you practice. You never thought you'd be able to swim, but then we went on holiday and you practiced in the pool, and that now you can swim. So it's just about reminding them of all those achievements that they've made over the years and that they can do it. Okay, number 6, good problem solving skills. How many of us automatically solve the problems for their children when problems arise? Yeah, I'm guilty of that too, okay? I think most parents are, because sometimes it's just easier to do it, isn't it? It's just easier to give them the answer or come up with the solution. I do think that parents of children with special educational needs do it a bit more. It's like we're putting an extra layer of bubble wrap around them. And it's not the best thing to do, but we don't realise we're doing it sometimes. You know, we just want to make sure that we're doing everything that we can as parents to support our young people. And sometimes that means, oh, yeah, I'll just do that for them. But actually, get your young person involved, get your child involved in the problems that they come across. You know, sit down and say, okay, let's look at the problem. What do you think we could do in this situation? It's not about involving them in every problem you come across, because that wouldn't be appropriate for young children to be involved in adult problem solving. But, make it a habit where you can. It's almost like training yourself, really, isn't it, to do this? But to get them involved and sit and think, okay, well, this is the problem. So how do you think we might solve this? And what's the impact that that's going to have? Get them thinking, so that we're not doing it for them. And that is a skill that, if taught from a very young age, they will just automatically grow into teenagers and then adults, knowing how to kind of develop that skill and be able to do it without even thinking about it. The next one then is accountability. So this came up quite a few times, that employers are looking for. And I suppose, in a way, what employers are looking for in terms of accountability as a skill to have is the ability to be able to maybe show some maturity and to be able to say, yes, I've made a mistake there. I should have done something differently, and I've learned from that. And I think as parents, we can support our young people by not creating a blame environment at home. Being able to allow our young people to make mistakes and to be able to reinforce that actually by making mistakes, that's how we learn, so that we can then, develop and get better, and we can grow as individuals ourselves. So it's really important, I think, to reinforce that and to remind our young people that even the big bosses of the big global companies, the CEO of Apple, Amazon, Microsoft, they've all made mistakes. They've probably all had failed ventures in their past. If you look at these entrepreneurs, so it's okay to make mistakes. In fact, we should be making mistakes, because that's how we learn. So as parents, we can support our young people by creating that environment where, it's not a blame environment. Next up then is emotional intelligence. And again, this is a really tricky one for our young people that have social emotional and maybe mental health difficulties, and maybe are quite dysregulated when it comes to their emotions. It is about recognizing what your emotions are. And then in terms of taking it to the next level is kind of, okay, I recognize this emotion that I'm feeling at the minute. Now I need to identify what it is I need to do to manage this emotion. The next level, I suppose, really is, if you get good at doing that in yourself, is recognizing it in other people and then changing how you communicate with them or react or don't react, because you can recognize that other person's maybe struggling at a certain time. But that is a next level. I think to start with, a lot of what we do in our schools across Witherslack group, we do a lot around zones of regulation, which you may have heard of. And zones of regulation, if I just show you a slide here, is about identifying which of these zones you are in. If you go into any of our schools, you will see this visual in lots of the classrooms. Even as adults, I think, we get out of bed the wrong side. Some days we wake up, we're just feeling a little bit, I don't know, a little bit sad, a little bit tired. Maybe you haven't had much sleep last night, or maybe you have had a good night's sleep, but you're still just feeling a little bit fed up, So this is zones of regulation is great to use for the whole family. Okay, it doesn't have to be just for your children. So it's about identifying that actually I'm in the blue zone today. And sometimes you don't have to have a reason for being in the blue zone. You just know that you can recognize that in yourself, and you don't have to kind of, spend time working out why, because what you need to do now, because you've got a busy day ahead. If it's your young person, they might have school, they might have a sports tournament after school, or they're going to dance class, or whatever it is. It's working out how you get from that blue zone or the yellow or the red zone, how you get to green, because we all want to be in the green zone. The green zone is our baseline. It's where we're feeling happy and calm and we're ready to face the day ahead. So it's all about getting back to our baseline. So, if we're in the yellow zone and we're feeling a bit giddy, I mean, it could be that we're a bit excited about something that's happening, and our, excitement levels are elevated and they're raising up. And this happens with our young people. And it's just kind of, without sort of dampening their enthusiasm, it's just about kind of bringing them back down so they're at baseline, so that they can move forward with their day in a way. Because sometimes if you're overly excited, then you're quite high up here, and then you go past the baseline and you end up in the blue zone then, because you're feeling quite exhausted really because of how your morning's been. So yeah, it's all about recognizing your emotions, having strategies in place to kind of allow you to get back to the green zone. And again, that might be taking a sensory break, a movement break, getting some fresh air, sort of, removing yourself to a quiet space in the classroom or the work environment. Yeah, so it's just about recognizing those zones of regulation. So back to our list, and now we're on to the 9th one, which is adaptability. So again, another tricky one for our young people, because if they are of a fixed mindset and they have rigidity of thought, then being able to adapt to situations can be quite tricky. But I think, like with resilience, teaching our young people that life is a bumpy road and things are not always going to go as planned. I think it's really important to reinforce with our young people that actually adaptability is really key. And then being able to say that, change is inevitable, and unfortunately it's going to happen, and we just have to look at ways around how we can change our mindset to then fit in and be a little bit more flexible. And then last but certainly not least, and I should have said earlier, these are in no particular order, organisation skills, independent skills. This has been brought up before, so this very often comes up. How do we get our young people more independent, doing things for themselves, teaching the importance of like using their initiative and things like that. And as I said earlier, sometimes it's very easy to do things for our young people, especially of a morning, you're on a time frame, you need to get to work, they need to get to school. You've got to have that kind of, so almost like routine in place to make sure that the jobs happen and then you get out the door. But when they're younger, it's a really good idea to maybe sit down and look at the tasks that need doing. I've put together just a very simple, and it is a very simple list that maybe you could think about doing. It could be that it's a morning task, and these are the jobs that need doing of a morning, and we're going to look at them every term and see, we're going to pick out which ones we're going to focus on for this term, and we're going to get them sorted. And then next term, after Christmas, we're going to look at a few more of these tasks. But sit down with your child and look at all of the things that they might need to do of a morning, and start picking off a few where you think, okay, they might not be at the stage where they can make their own packed lunch or pull that together, but you can take your cereal bowl out and put it in the sink or put it in the dishwasher. You can wash your face, you can brush your teeth, you can go and get your bottle of water out the fridge for your packed lunch, things like that. So that's a really good way of starting to develop your child's independence. Now, if they're a bit older, they're teenagers, then the list won't look like this. This is obviously if you're going to be starting much earlier. Or depending on the needs of your child, they may be teenage in age years, but they might be sort of operating at a lower level emotionally and behaviorally and socially. So it's just about what's right for you. But if it was for an older child, then you would be looking at things like setting your own alarm clock, ironing your uniform for the night, the night before, or prepping your own packed lunch, things like that. So it's whatever fits for your child. So they were the 10 that I wanted to talk about. I want to move on now to gaining some experience. I want to look at how we can support our young people with some experience of work and what it might be like when they do leave school or college. So we're going to start today just having a little talk about work experience. I think this is huge, work experience. It's usually organised through schools from year 9 onwards. It will vary for every school. What I would say as parents is don't rely on the school to get the work experience in place for your child, okay? Because if you think about the numbers that they have to cover and how many sort of organisations they have to reach out to, if you've got someone that is a family member or a friend that works at an organisation that can give your child some work experience, then please do look into it, and get it set up. And the other thing I'd say is don't worry about it being a 2-week work placement, okay? When I was at school, which was many years ago, that's what we used to do. We used to have two weeks in the one place. Nowadays, it's more about experience of the workplace. So actually, even if you're just getting a day or two in one place and maybe a day or two elsewhere, that's going to be great. And think about all of those little smaller opportunities that they could have with work experience. And when they come to put that on their CV, which we'll come to a bit later on, how great that's going to look. So yeah, don't think it's got to be two weeks. I think the difficulty as well that we sometimes have with our children that have special educational needs is that when you are speaking to an employer and you're asking about work experience, there can be a little bit of a fear on their side because they don't know too much about autism, or they don't know too much about ADHD or neurodiverse conditions. So there might be a little bit of uncertainty there. So they might not want to commit to anything more than a day or two to start with. So if you just go in small, then you've got more chance of that employer giving you that opportunity for your young person to come along and spend some time in the business. And it might be that they are supported on the first day, either by yourself as a parent or by someone from the school that you could look into that. It might be if that goes well and the employer is happy to have your young person back, that maybe on the second occasion, they just have someone to drop them off, pick them up at the end of the day. And then on the third occasion, maybe they're not, their support is still taking them, but is not sort of hanging around, is allowing them to go into the workplace on their own. It'll be different for every experience, I imagine, but it is something that's worth thinking about for our young people. If some parents have spoken to me in the past to say they won't go in, and they have maybe social anxiety, and because of their autism, they have difficulties interacting, and they are going to really struggle being in a working environment. So I suppose it's maybe about thinking about opportunities that they can have where they're not speaking to people too much. So for my daughter, who I mentioned earlier, she's actually taken photography as part of her GCSE course. And so we've been in touch with our local animal sanctuary, because they're always posting things on social media to say, oh, we've got this little, this dog that needs rehoming, or this cat that needs rehoming. So we've approached them to see if she can go in and take some photographs for them. And to be fair, she'd rather be dealing with the dogs than humans anyway. She's told me that. I know that she does. She would much prefer to be spending her days with animals rather than speaking to people. So we thought that might be a good opportunity for her, because it does kind of reduce the amount of sort of talking that she will need to do and speaking to others. I do tell her that she does need to kind of develop those skills, because you will always need that. But there are jobs that are out there that you don't need it as much as others. So I'm never going to put her here or expect her to be in a situation where she's in a customer services department, for example, because she would just melt at the thought of that. So yeah, it's about finding a work experience opportunity that's suitable for your young person. Now, if even doing something like that fills your child with dread, and you as well, there are virtual work experience opportunities available, which I know are quite different. You're not getting a real feel for being in a workplace environment and dipping your toe in the water like that. But there are opportunities online, and there is a Well, there's quite a few actually, but there's a really good company called SpringPod that do a lot of virtual work experience opportunities. So that might be something worth looking at. I think if you are looking at work experience, some industries and some organisations, they will want 16 as a minimum age. So if your child wants to get into construction, getting on a construction site for work experience, they do need to be 16 from an insurance point of view. So there might be some things like that that you need to look into. So how else can they gain experience if it's not done in this way? Well, they might want a part-time job. So for our young people here in the UK, 3 months or thereabouts before their 16th birthday, they will get their national insurance card through and their national insurance number, which will enable them to look at part-time work, whether that's of a Saturday, Sunday, or an evening. I think one of the things to kind of maybe mention, if your child is 16 and they're looking for a part-time job, although it's not exclusive to, what you will find is that the majority of the jobs will come across two sectors, and that's the retail sector and the catering and hospitality sector. So you like see McDonald's, working in the local pub, collecting glasses, things like that. So that's, as I say, it's not exclusive, but the majority of the part-time jobs may fall into those two areas. So that's just something that's worth considering. The other thing I will say as well is, as well as applying for part-time jobs online, you know, there is the old-fashioned way of doing things, of printing off your CV and kind of getting out there on foot. So you go to a retail park and you take your CV round, and, you know, as well as being able to try and get yourself a part-time job, you're also maybe tackling some of those communication skills, tasks that we talked about earlier, of being able to go in, ask for the manager, hand your CV in with a smile, with a bit of eye contact if you can, just to kind of show willing, and that can quite often set you in good stead for getting a part-time job. So what if you've got a young person who is not 16, they're 14, and they want a part-time job? That can be tricky as well. So I have a younger child who is neurotypical, and a very opposite from my teenage daughter. And in the summer holidays this year, him and his mates have been doing some car washes, and they have literally, because they've got the confidence to do so, been able to knock at people's doors, ask if they'd like their car cleaned, can you fill me bucket, and off they went, and they earned themselves a little bit of money. Again, this can be tricky for some of our young people with SEND, but, you know, not for all. You know, some of our young people will have the confidence to do that, and to maybe knock at doors. But there's lots of different opportunities that they could get involved in if they're under 16, babysitting, dog sitting or dog walking, cleaning cars, as I say, cutting grass, lemonade stands. They seem to be becoming more and more popular, having a paper round or working on a market stall. So there's other opportunities there as well. At home, who gives their child pocket money? Yeah, we don't in our household, but if you're giving them pocket money, then you might want to say that is for taking the bins out, picking the dog poop up out the garden, feeding the dog, feeding the fish, whatever it is, whatever those jobs are that need doing at home, maybe link that in. Tidying the bedroom's a really good one. I'm sure you're all onto this anyway, but it's just useful to know that it is a way of sort of encouraging your child to do an activity in return for some hard-earned cash. So that tends to work quite well. So next up, we've got volunteering. And again, it's another fantastic opportunity for young people to get an experience of the workplace. And I think the great thing about volunteering is that your child is committing to do something. And again, great for the CV to show that they're willing to do something that's not purely just for themselves, but they're prepared to do something for someone else or for a worthy organisation. And it's a great way to learn soft skills and to support charities that might need an extra pair of hands. And yeah, there's a volunteering section on the government website, which is a good starting point. But you can, of course, use search engines to search for volunteering opportunities in your area, or if there's a local charity. I mentioned about the animal sanctuary earlier on that we've approached for my daughter to do the photographs for. You can get in touch with them direct, and it's a really good way of, as I say, developing those soft skills for young people. Next up then, CVs, which I've mentioned a couple of times. Now, I'm not going to spend this afternoon talking about how to write a CV, okay? Because there are plenty of templates out there that you can find. You can go online and search them. But one of the things that, or a couple of things that I did want to mention about CVs. Do you know how long the average employer looks at a CV before deciding to put it on the yes, no, or the maybe pile to progress it to interview? Well, I'll tell you, it's 6 seconds. Okay, so when you're putting a CV together and your child's putting a CV out there, they've got 6 seconds to kind of impress that potential employer. So it's got to be clear, it's got to be easy on the eye. If there are any sections of the CV that you want to kind of jump off the page, then I'd suggest that you put maybe like highlight it with a box or something like that. Because I can tell you from the other side, when I've been sifting through CVs, when I've been looking to recruit, you get so many of them sometimes that you're almost, you know, you're kind of putting them on the no pile unless there's something there that kind of jumps out at you. And I think the first thing that you tend to go for is you'll look initially to see whether that young person has got the right grades, qualifications, or experience to do the actual job. But if you get put on the yes or the maybe pile, then the employer comes back to your CV a bit later on, and they're going to spend a little bit more time looking through it. This is where those soft skills come into play that we talked about earlier. So what I will say is, in that little section, which is usually the last one, which talks about hobbies and interests, don't just think, hobbies and interests, well, you know, does it really matter what I put in there? Yes, it does. Okay, so don't underestimate the power of that section on the CV, okay? Because once an employer knows that you've got the qualifications to do the job and the experience, they want to know a little bit about you as a person. So put things down there that you like doing, put everything on there that you enjoy doing. And if you can be clever about it, then you can link your hobbies and your interests with the job that you're applying for. Now, sometimes there might not be a very clear link. So sometimes it's useful to maybe say, you know, I like playing chess, and I believe that this is good because it enables me to be a strategic, logical thinker, which will be, you know, which is a good skill to have, a good transferable skill to have. Or it might be fantasy football. You know, I enjoy being part of fantasy football team, and that I enjoy the research side of things and the strategic planning of it, which will make me good for this job. You know, so don't automatically think that because you're putting something on there, it's not related to the job that you're applying for. Think about the soft skills that you learn from kind of being involved in that hobby, and then how you can transfer that to the job that you're applying for. So I'm going to conclude today because I'm conscious of time, and we're going to do some questions and answers. I think what I need to sort of say to people and remind people is that families really do need to share their child's desire to get a job. Coaches are great at inspiring, they're great at encouraging young people, but it really is a young person's family that strengthens their resolve. So to get involved in that and help them create new environments and new routines, and to start it at a young age, really is invaluable. And the more that families can encourage, then the more determined that the young person will become to overcome their challenges and achieve their goals. So I think the real secret behind all of this, as I mentioned, is around work experience. So if you can encourage your young person to get involved, as I say, whether that's through work experience, volunteering, or part-time job, then yes, I think that's a fantastic start. And the earlier you can do it, the better. So I just wanted to say thank you for listening, and if we could maybe have a little look at whether the expectations of the presentation have been achieved. So we talked about, and you might have to remind me here, Jodie, understanding opportunities, was it, in the workplace? For workplace training?
Hello.
Hiya, Jodie.
It was understanding opportunities for my child and how employers can accommodate my autistic child.
Yeah, so hopefully understanding opportunities might have been sort of covered with the work experience, part-time job, or getting, volunteering opportunities for young people. Hopefully that's addressed that. And how employers can accommodate, was it how they can accommodate
Yes,
your
how they can
person?
accommodate my autistic child.
Yeah, so I think more and more organisations are becoming neurodiverse aware. We're probably not where we need to be with it, but we are moving in the right direction. I think if you're happy for your employer to understand your needs as a young person with some special educational needs and some difficulties in areas, if you're happy to share those with your employer, then actually there's a lot that can be done, and a lot of employers will be able to support and make reasonable adjustments within the workplace. If it's an apprenticeship that your child is on with an employer, then again, if they're happy to share their needs, I think that's really good, for a couple of reasons. From a funding point of view, the employer will be able to get some funding to support your child's needs in the workplace. So if you're happy to share that, then I think that can go a long way. But employers should be aiming to make reasonable adjustments to support you in the workplace. And there is the Equalities Act as well, that employers need to adhere to from that point of view. Does that help?
Yes, that's great, Janine. Thank you. We've had a lot of questions come through, so we'll try and get through as many as we can before the end of the conference today. The first question is about apprenticeships and how the EHCP should be maintained. Would the college speak to the employers with regards to needs, or would the young person / parent speak directly to the employer?
Okay, so if your child has an EHCP, that will not impact on them having an apprenticeship. They can still maintain the EHCP whilst being in an apprenticeship because of the education element of the apprenticeship. But I'd say that the EHCP is really more for the college, for the training provider. I think it's probably worth the young person or the parent having the communication with the employer, rather than the employer and the college communicating directly. I think it's probably best if that's done either through the young person or the parent, because from the employer's point of view, some of them may never have heard of an EHCP. They might not know what it is, and as I mentioned before about the Equalities Act, the employers are probably more concerned around staying in line with legislation around the Equalities Act, rather than an EHCP. So I think maybe for that one, probably the young person or the parent would be better communicating directly with the employer.
That's great, thank you. Our next question is, my autistic daughter is in mainstream sixth form. What do you think about being open about your child's diagnosis with employers, particularly when applying for jobs?
Yeah, so again, that's a personal preference really, as to whether, some young people just don't want to share their diagnosis, and they do get through. I've got a friend and a work colleague whose daughter has done just that. She's gone right the way through mainstream school. She's not even told her friends that she's autistic, and she's managed to get through college and university and now be in a job. But I do think that if you're happy to share your diagnosis, then maybe you don't do it she doesn't do it in a direct way when she's putting an application in, or at an interview. Maybe she, rather than saying I'm autistic and sharing her diagnosis, maybe she just shares her needs, or maybe she says, I struggle with processing information, for example. So I find it helpful if I can. So, so kind of think about, that's your diagnosis. Think of it this way: that's your diagnosis. These are your needs, and these are the things that can help you. So it's almost like you're providing a solution. So maybe if she feels a bit uncomfortable saying I have an autism diagnosis or an ADHD diagnosis, or whatever that might be, maybe just focus on the needs, and what she does to combat that, maybe.
That's great, thank you. Our next question is, I have a 14-year-old daughter, ADHD, ASD, dyslexia, and dyscalculia. Would she be able to go to college if she doesn't get GCSEs or A levels?
Yes, yeah, she can. It's tricky, isn't it? They don't very often come with one thing, do they? Our special educational needs children. They always have a few more of things going on. It's a real shame sometimes, but yeah, it shouldn't stop her. I think nowadays, obviously, a lot of colleges will make conditional offers for young people who are doing their GCSEs, and if they get the grades, then they know that they've got a way in. But for colleges and for universities, there's always clearing. So it's always worthwhile, if your child doesn't get the grades that they want, that they could maybe look at contacting the college after the results day is, after the results are out, and just seeing if there's a way that there are any spaces where they can still get the course they want. Sometimes they don't always get the course they want. They might be offered something different, which again can be disappointing. But if you're having those conversations with your child to say, again, what we were talking about, resilience, and life doesn't always go as planned, that there might be another course for them to get involved in. But also, I think, when it comes to GCSEs, because they're structured in a certain way, that's not to say that your child wouldn't be able to maybe get functional skills qualifications that equate to maybe like a grade 4 for a GCSE. And they can resit GCSEs, and they tend to do them sort of in the November after they've had the results in the August. So they can do that, but it might be worth looking at functional skills qualifications, and you can actually sign up and pay to do them yourself online. I think it's the name's gone out of my head. I think it's Reed that are possibly a provider of, and I think it's about £12, and they can get the qualification, but it's a functional skills qualification as opposed to a GCSE, but it equates to the same. So it still provides them with that stepping stone that they can still, get into college. So, all is not lost. Yeah, the answer to that is yes, they still can. They still can get a place.
That's great, thank you. Our final question is, what are some reasonable adjustments to ask employers for?
Right, okay. So I think that's a tricky one, because it would depend really on the circumstances. I think what employers are happy to do are to make smaller adjustments that are going to allow that young person to still be able to complete their job, to the level that the employer wants them to. So, a reasonable adjustment wouldn't necessarily be, can I come in at 11 o'clock and finish at 1? Because you're not gonna get done in the 2 hours what you need to get done in the day. But a reasonable adjustment might be, you might have a young person who is, having to use public transport to get in and is really stressing out. Public transport might be difficult for them to use anyway, and they're really stressing out because the train that they need to get on gets them in, like, to get them in on time. They have to like leave extra early. They have, you know, and it's having an impact. And if they were able to maybe just get the next train, which is going to get them into the workplace maybe 4 minutes late, but is that okay? You know, that could be, you know, something that is discussed with an employer to see if that's okay for them to do. If that young person, maybe given a different situation, needs a movement break, a sensory break, it's about kind of saying to the employer, look, you know, if I can have that break, and that 5-minute movement break is going to be much worthwhile, me being able to do that, because actually I can then come back, refocus, and I can be as productive as I was earlier on, but not having that break, you know. So it's kind of it's more effective to allow the break to happen so that I can come back and be productive because I've refocused now, and being able to kind of put it that way. I suppose it would depend a lot on, I suppose, the type of job that they were doing. There's also opportunity. There's a discretionary fund that the government has called Access to Work. I just wanted to throw that in here before the presentation finishes, because if you've got a young person who would like support with a job coach, for example, who could ask these questions on behalf of the young person, you can actually apply for funding for that, and it's quite a common approval that the government give through this Access to Work funding pot of money, and that job coach can kind of ask all of these questions on your child's behalf in the workplace. But hopefully, as I say, just going back to that, I'll give that one a little bit more thought to see what would be classed as a reasonable adjustment.